Hi, 5th graders. Welcome to Lesson 9.1, Line Plots. The essential question for this lesson is, how can a line plot help you find an average with data given in fractions? Now, go ahead and open up in your Go Math workbooks to Lesson 9.1, found on page 183, and let's get started. Now, let's take a look at this first slide together. It says, use the data to complete the line plot. Now, a line plot is simply a way to represent and visualize data. We're going to be able to visually see, using our line plot, how the data is represented. Now, our problem says, a clerk in a health food store makes bags of trail mix. The amount of trail mix in each bag is listed below. So what you see right here is the amount of trail mix listed or given in each bag. So we're now going to complete our line plot down here using that data. So what I'm going to do is this, because my first number here, the first amount that I come to is my 1/4 pound, I'm going to now go ahead and count how many 1/4 pound bags of trail mix we encounter in our data set. And what I know is this. I know that our first amount is 1/4 of a pound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross off that 1/4 pound, and I'm going to, above that 1/4 in my line plot, go ahead and put an X to represent that 1/4 pound. Now, that's 1. Now here's 2. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that one off as well, and I'm going to add another X above my 1/4 pound. So we have 1, 2, so far 1, 2 X's. Now I'm going to go across until I get to my next 1/4 pound, so here's 3. So I'm going to go ahead and cross off the 1/4 pound here, and I'm going to put another X above my 1/4 down there. Now let's continue our count. Here's another 1/4 pound, so that makes 4. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that one off as well, and I'm going to place another X in my line plot. So what I know is this. In the data set, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 1/4 pounds, and what I know is now in my line plot I have 1, 2, 3, 4 X's to represent those 4 1/4 pound bags. Now I'm going to come across to my next number, which is our 1/2. And I'm going to begin to make a count again of how many now 1/2 pound bags we have of trail mix. So I'm going to go ahead and begin, and I see right here we have 1 of our 1/2 pound bags. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cross that off, and I'm going to put an X above our 1/2. Now I'm going to continue counting. Here's another one, so that makes 2. So we're going to go ahead and cross that one off and place another X here. Now we'll continue our count. Here's 3, so we'll go ahead and cross that one out and place an X above the 1/2. And then here's 4, so we'll cross that one off and place another X above our 1/2 as well. So for the 1/2 pound bags, there was 1, 2, 3, 4. So in our line plot, we now have 1, 2, 3, 4 X's. Now my last step is to count how many 3/4 pound bags we have. So I'm going to go back to my data set and make my count. Here's 1, so I'm going to go ahead and cross out that 3/4 pound, and I'm going to place an X above the 3/4. We'll continue counting. Here's 2, so we'll cross out that 3/4 pound and put an X above our 3/4. Here's 3, so we'll go ahead and cross that one out as well, place another X above the 3/4, and then here is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and cross that 3/4 pound off and place another X above our 3/4 in the line plot. Now what I know is there's 1, 2, 3, 4 3/4 pound in our data set, and there's now 1, 2, 3, 4 X's in our line plot. What I also notice is, looking at our data set, I see that all of our numbers have been crossed off or crossed out, and that means I've accounted for every number in the data set. It's a good strategy to use as you complete your line plot. So we now have our line plot completed for this data set. Now let's take a look at question number 1 together. As you can see, question number 1 has already been completed for us, but it's a good model or example to show us how to use our line plot in order to complete a given question. For number 1, it says, what is the combined weight of the 1/4 pound bags? So I know that I'm focusing on the 1/4 pound bags. Now remember, in our line plot, we knew that there were 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 1/4 pound bags. So what I can do is this. I can take my 1/4 and over here I'm going to write down my 1/4, and I'm going to multiply that by 4, because once again, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 x's. Now, when I do that, what I know I can do is this. In multiplication, I can take that whole number 4 and I can put it over a 1 to put it in fraction form. And now I'm going to look to see, can I simplify diagonally? Well, I know that I have a 4 and a 4 and a 1 and a 1. And I know with those two 4s I can simplify, so I'm going to cross those 4s out, and I'm going to make both of those 4s into 1s. Now when I multiply across, here's what I have. 1 times 1 is going to give me 1. And I know once again that 1 times 1 is going to give me 1. And if I have the whole number 1 as my numerator, and also the whole number 1 as my denominator, I know that my answer is going to turn out to be 1 whole. So that's how we're coming up with an answer of 1 pound. So the combined weight of the 1/4 pound bags is going to be 1 pound, because 1/4 times 4 takes me to 1. Now let's take a look at question number 2. Question 2 says, what is the combined weight of the 1/2 pound bags? So what I'm going to do this time is, in my line plot, I'm now going to focus on the 1/2 pound bags. And what I know is this, based on the number of x's, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 1/2 pound bags. So I can utilize the strategy that we did on the last question, and what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take my 1/2, so I'm going to go ahead and write down 1/2, and I'm going to multiply that once again by the number 4, because there's 1, 2, 3, 4 1/2 pound bags. So I'm going to multiply 1/2 times 4, and remember, I can place a 1 underneath that 4 to put it in fraction form. Now I'm going to look diagonally to see if I can simplify. I have a 1 and a 1 and a 2 and a 4. And what I know is I can simplify that 2 and that 4. So I'm going to go ahead and cross out the 2 and the 4. That 2 is going to become a 1 because 2 divided by 2 gives us 1. And that 4 is going to become a 2 because 4 divided by 2 gives us 2. Now we're going to go ahead and multiply straight across. Numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator. And what I know is this. I know that 1 times 2 is going to give me 2. So our numerator is going to be a 2. And I know that 1 times 1 is going to give me 1. So our denominator is going to be a 1. And if I have the whole number 2 over 1, I know my answer is going to turn out to be 2. So what that tells me is the combined weight of the 1/2 pound bags is going to turn out to be 2 pounds. So we'll go ahead and write down 2 pounds, and we now have found our answer using our line plot. Now let's take a look at question number 3. Question 3 says, what is the combined weight of the 3/4 pound bags? So I know that in my line plot this time, I'm going to focus on the 3/4 pound bags. And I know based on the number of x's, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 3/4 pound bags. So I'm going to use the strategy that we did for the last couple of questions, and what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take my 3/4, and since there are, once again, 1, 2, 3, 4 x's, I'm going to multiply that 3/4 by 4. Now once again, I'm going to put that 4 over 1 to put it in fraction form. Now I'm going to look diagonally to see, can I simplify? And what I know is I have a 3 and a 1 and also a 4 and a 4. And I know that I can simplify those two 4s. So I'm going to go ahead and cross those 4s out and make both of those 4s into 1s. Now we're ready to go ahead and multiply across. So I have 3 times 1, which is going to give me 3. So 3 becomes the numerator. And now I have 1 times 1, which is going to give me 1. So 1 is my denominator. And if I have 3 over 1, I know that my answer turns out to be the whole number 3. So what that tells me is, when it asks for the combined weight of the 3/4 pound bags, I know that my answer turns out to be 3 pounds. So we'll go ahead and write that down, and we now have our answer using our line plot. Now, for question number 4, it says, what is the total weight of the trail mix used in all the bags? Now remember, we had our line plot completed with our x's, And in the last few slides, we found the total weight of each one of those. So for 1/4 pound, since there were 1, 2, 3, 4 X's, our total weight was 1 pound. For the 1/2 bags, there were 1, 2, 3, 4 of those bags. And so we multiplied 4 times 1/2 and came up with 2 pounds. And for the last weight, there was 3/4, and there were 1, 2, 3, 4 of those 3/4 pound bags. So when you multiply 3/4 times 4, it takes you to 3 pounds. Now this question once again says, what is the total weight? So if I'm going to find the total weight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add those amounts together. So I'm going to be adding my 1 pound plus my 2 pounds plus my 3 pounds. And when I add those amounts together, 1 plus 2 is going to give me 3, and 3 plus 3 is going to give me 6. So that tells me that there's going to be 6 pounds of the trail mix used in all of the bags. And we now have our total weight. Now let's take a look at question number 5. It says, what is the average amount of trail mix in each bag? Now the key word here is the word average. And in order to find the average, it simply means the middle or the mean of all of your data set. So there's a couple of steps we're going to take in order to find the average amount of trail mix in each bag. Step number 1, you have to find the sum of the weights of the bags of trail mix. And what we know is from our last slide is this. That means we have to add the 1 plus the 2 plus the 3. And when I add the 1 pound plus the 2 pounds plus the 3 pounds, that gives me a total of 6 pounds. So we now have the weight of those pounds of trail mix. Now step number 2 is this. We now have to divide. And we're going to divide the sum, which is 6, by the number of bags. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my line plot and I'm going to make a count of all of my X's. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 6 and I'm going to be dividing that by the 12 bags. So we have our 6 pounds divided by the 12 bags. Now what I know that means is this. I can also write that in fraction form. So we have our 6, and remember that line can represent a fraction or also division. So 6 divided by 12. Now I know that I can't leave 6/12 as my final answer because I know that I can divide both a 6 and a 12 by 6. So when I do that, I know that 6 divided by 6 is going to give me 1, so our numerator becomes a 1. And I know that 12 divided by 6 is going to give me a 2. So now what I know is the average amount of trail mix in each bag is 1/2 pound. So I'm going to go ahead and write down my 1/2 pound. And we now have the answer to our question. We know the average or the middle or mean of our data set. Now, as your homework for tonight, you need to complete question number 1 and question number 2, as well as numbers 3 through 6 found in your Go Math workbook on page 184. Don't forget, somewhere on your homework page, I want you to assess yourself. Do you feel like you're number 1, a novice, number 2, an apprentice, number 3, a practitioner, or number 4, an expert? Don't forget, your homework for tonight is to complete question number 1 and question number 2, as well as numbers 3 through 6 found in your Go Math workbook on page 184. We hope you have a great evening and we look forward to seeing you in class tomorrow.